Bon dia a tothom. Good morning, everyone. Um, Thanks for being here, the last day of the conference, 9 a.m. And I hope that you are also enjoying. First of all, who I am. My name is Maria Fanlo. As you see, I'm currently a peace advisor working in Ethiopia with the GIZ, and I will be moderating this panel this morning. So as you see, we titled this session, Do We Remember Authoritarianism? With the aim to discuss and to get some insights on the connection on how societies remember the past, which mechanisms they use, with the current situation most of our societies are living, that we have been already talking a lot these last 2 days, with a race of authoritarian discourses, change of narratives, and an increasing polarization. So to talk about this, we have these two speakers, Natasha Supan and Paco Ferrandiz. Natasha is the head of the Global Learning Hub for Transitional Justice and Reconciliation at the Berghoff Foundation since 2022. And she has been working at the interface of peace-building policy and practice, also state and civil society for many years, with a specific focus on peace processes in the Middle East, but also in former Yugoslavia countries. She has been working in transitional justice and also in conflict-sensitive of development cooperation. And Paco thank you, Natasha, for being here. Paco is a social anthropologist and is a senior researcher at the Spanish National Research Council, CSIC, in Spain. He has been actively engaged in public anthropology and in the analysis of both grassroots and institutional memory politics in Spain and in Europe. And he was also an advisor of the Spanish government through the Secretary of Democratic Memory until 2023. Thank you, Paco, for being here. And let's start. The format of this session will be, I will try to launch 3 questions, then we will open the floor to the audience. And I would like to ask you, do we remember authoritarianism? Maybe Paco, you can start.
Well, good morning to everybody. Thanks to the International Catalan Institute for Peace and organizers for the invitation. What a question, no? We were talking about this session yesterday, and we decided that we were going to be comparing Spain and Germany, what's happening in both countries. And I don't know how many of you know about the situation in Spain in the last 25 years in terms of transitional justice and what's happening on the ground. So just to give you like a very short overview, we had a civil war almost 90 years ago. There was a military uprising against a democratic republic. There was a very, very bloody war. There was an incredible repression in the rear guards, like 50,000 people killed by Republicans and 150,000 civilians executed by Franco and his troops. After this, a lot of repression also during the dictatorship. We had almost 4 decades of dictatorship with memory politics, like Franco's memory politics. And as you know, Franco died in 1975. I'm just tiptoeing over very complex processes just to give you this overview of what has happened in the last few years. There was a transition to democracy after Franco died in 1975. This transition, probably most of you have heard about it, and in some instances it's considered to be a very exemplary transition that has been kind of exported to other countries and whatnot. But a few decades after that, a new generation came in, the generation of the grandchildren, and they started to challenge this idea of this reconciliation or false reconciliation or fake reconciliation that was achieved after the end of the dictatorship. And this was because what grandchildren, the generation of the grandchildren, realized that there was this reconciliation came at the price of the impunity of the crimes of Francoism. No? So, and in the year 2000, there was a very important exhumation in the province of León, in Prianza del Bierzo. These were like 13 Republicans executed, extrajudicial killings from the Civil War. And this, as you can imagine, came as a shocker. Because suddenly in Spain we also had mass graves, and then we started to understand the scale of this, because we are looking about 150,000 people in thousands of mass graves around the country, in a country that already belongs to the European Union and what else, no? So this has been one of the shockers in Spain in the last 2 years. So as of today, we have, in round numbers, we have like 1,000 mass graves exhumed and 18,000 bodies recovered from these mass graves. Still a lot of work to do. So this started from civil society, bottom up, and it was in the media. There have been incredible controversies because as it was a civil war, and we were talking about this, it's very difficult because you have two sides, and they are kind of showing up again. You have the Spain that kind of connects themselves with Franco, and the Spain connecting to the defeated in the war. No? So this is playing out, and there is a lot of polarization, as Maria also was saying. No? But after, just to give you some overviews, in the last, the institutions had to react to this movement, which was very powerful. So there was a memory law in 2007, very imperfect, with a lot of problems. There was another memory law in 2022. But before that, there was a report by Pablo de Greve, the Special Rapporteur for Truth, Justice and Reconciliation from the UN. Very harsh report on what the situation of transitional justice in Spain. And in reaction to this report, a few years later, we had this other memory law that is now being implemented. No? So there are many, many different issues about, so the way in which we are remembering authoritarianism in Spain, so to speak, is going to the crimes that were committed during the dictatorship. No? And this 80, 90 years after the war is a situation that is very unusual, because usually you implement transitional justice measures or programs in countries where you are moving from dictatorship or war or violence into democratic regimes. In Spain, it took decades to get to this stage, no? And this whole process has become very, very, it has many, many different ramifications. And just to mention one very important is last week, it was the 50th anniversary of the death of Francisco Franco. And during the whole year, there have been all kinds of activities, like academic, institutional, pedagogical, just to try to convey what it means to live in a democratic society versus what happened during the dictatorship. Because now we are having a backlash, and we can talk about this later, which almost 20% of young people believe that the dictatorship was not bad. So we are in a very, I mean, this may come as a shocker, not to many of you, because Spain looked like a country that achieved, this democracy, but all the imperfections of this transition to democracy and this pact, of reconciliation are now showing up in Spanish society. Mm-hmm. So.
Thank you, Paco. And I was thinking, Natasha, Germany dealt with the past in a very different way than Spain. Right? Memory work has been present since decades ago. How would you answer this question with a totally different context?
Well, a very easy answer would be we are the world champions, not in football, but in obviously at least what we thought of in the culture of memorialization and remembrance. So basically, over the last almost 30 years, we did develop a very broad and multi-layered landscape, institutional landscape, and I think that's important, and it's a difference to a certain degree to Spain. We do have a very broad landscape of memorialization, and we do remember not only authoritarianism, but we have different layers of violence, which we at least try to remember, which is, of course, the Nazi dictatorship. It's the war of annihilation and genocide. It's also the communist dictatorship. And we are struggling about our colonial past in recent years. So basically, we do have on many different levels of the society, from the local to the state, museums, memorial sites, civic education, formal education. We do have culture and arts. It's really broad. And it is very much supported by state institutions, again, on a local level, but also on the federal level. So what we have is a so-called state minister, which is basically, who's basically responsible for memorial sites in Germany. I'll probably come back to it later on. So it is institutionalized. It's part of our national memory. So there is a kind of a consensus in Germany. But I think what is really important to see is, first of all, it also grew up bottom up. And I do not know any process in the world, including Germany, where you did not have activists at the beginning struggling for truth and acknowledgement of what happened in the past. So at least for 30 years, survivor of concentration camps, political prisoners, etc., in, at least I'm from Western Germany, so it's a very specific perspective also. So we have been struggling for acknowledgement of victims of the Holocaust and the Second World War for 30 years, until state somehow took up this narrative or the struggle and turned it into also state politics. So first of all, it is bottom up very often. It really contributed to the democratization of the German society during the 80s, 90s of the last century. And it really focused to acknowledge the victims of the Second World War. But secondly, and that's, I think, one issue we might also discuss, because it's not always easy. In today's transitional justice discourse, we are very much focusing on victim-centered approaches, and I think it's really important. So what Germany did in the last 30 years, obviously, is also focusing on the victims. So their stories of suffering and survival, we did not really focus a lot on resistance. We are not very well in talking about bystanders. The many bystanders around in the society. And I think what is really important today is we did not really focus on the systems and mechanisms of authoritarianism, the system of control, fear, exploitation, small private gains, which kind of integrated basically everybody into the system of authoritarian rule and violence. So I've been studying in Syria at the beginning of the 90s, and I guess I got a small feeling about what it means to live in an authoritarian, violent system. So I think that's really important. And third, because of our multi-layered history of violence and war, they are also different victims groups, right? So what we have in Germany, and you will find all over your places most probably, we do have different categories of victims. We have a hierarchization of victims. We have conflicts in between different victims groups. So officially now we are struggling with integrating not only the acknowledgement, remembrance, and reparations for Jewish victims, but also for, in historic terms, homosexuals, Sinti and Roma, completely marginalized, struggling for it till today. We also have conflicts of acknowledging victims of the Nazi regime and the communist regime in Eastern Germany. And as I already mentioned, how do we integrate colonialism? Which is also, I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but for me, it's a system of violence and exploitation too. So people are struggling right now in Germany to integrate acknowledgement, reparation, and truth into the German landscape of memorialization. So I think, yes, we do, but there are a lot of buts in between the lines in Germany.
Thanks, Natasha. I was thinking maybe you were talking about consensus, right? That in Germany there is a consensus, and I was translating that to Spain, which there is I would say, a battle for the memory discourse. Even when I was coming here, I was listening into the radio on the framework of this 50th anniversary of Franco death. They were saying that in Catalonia there's still 1,000 Franquist symbols. So we're still going on that. And I feel that for the people, that we work in memory, like that we are stuck. It's like a circle, and that maybe we're in a turning point. What do you think in this situation here? And what are the challenges that we are really facing?
We were talking about polarization, and Spain is different from Germany because, every process in every country in the world transitional justice process is very complex, has many layers and different actors. And Spain is very different from Germany also because here what we had is a civil war, and so you have two sides, and as I was saying, like this supposed reconciliation that we had in Spain now is being challenged because of this polarization. Maria is talking about the Francoist monuments or signals or street names, so Spain is absolutely full of. The dictatorship was imprinted in the country at every level, and still, 50 years after the death of the dictator, we have so many statues, monuments, street names, names of cities, what you call it, and it's every time there is like an attempt to take out one of them, there is a whole memorial battle. So it's called. Spain is full of memorial skirmishes all over the country. So it's not just that there are controversies, but there is like a real backlash after 25 years of seeing wounded bodies, because they were executed with coup de grace. They had the bullet to the head, and this has been in the media during 25 years. The people who were against this process, or they were uncomfortable with the process because their relatives, like former relatives, kind of were involved in some way or another in these crimes. Now they are gaining power because of this global trend movement towards the extreme right. And here in Spain we have a new party, Vox. It's been out there only for 10 years, but it's now at 20% also of the voting, and they are totally against this. No, so there is like a total backlash against this social movement that became institutionalized. Even we have now a special prosecutor for human rights and democratic memory, but she cannot do much because it's blocked by the way in which the judicial system is also controlled by the right wing. No? So there have been a number of memory laws too in state. I mentioned them, but there have been memory laws also in different autonomous communities, which is also very important because the autonomous communities, in Catalonia, it's totally different from Madrid. In the Basque Country, is total, so the memory politics in each of the places are very different. No? So what's happening in the autonomous communities governed by the right is that they are overruling the memory laws, and they are putting in its place what they call Concord laws. And these Concord laws are totally outside of what you could think is a transitional justice paradigm. Even the UN has issued a report against them because they don't take they don't pay any attention to victims. They don't call Franco's regime a dictatorship. They cut all the funding for memorial issues and whatnot. So this is happening all over Spain. So still now we're having this terrible backlash, no? And the arguments that were used is like this is just opening all wounds. We were already reconciled. We are all very good friends. So we are in a, so the right and the right wing are the ones who are defending now the concept of reconciliation because it benefited them during the transition to democracy. So this is a real problem because we don't know. People is starting to distrust concepts like reconciliation because reconciliation is a very big word, but what's the content of this word? No? So in Spain, to talk about reconciliation now is out of fashion, so to speak, for the left, but for the right. So they could say, you are opening up all wounds, we are going to be defunding your laws, this is guerra civilism, or again, we are in the future, we are a prosperous country, why talk about the civil war again, this is just a revenge, just attempt at winning a lost war and whatnot, necrophilia, because you are with these bodies and you are just bringing out these bodies, leave the dead alone. They are dead, and there was a lot of suffering on both sides and whatnot. So this is what we are. You are basically blowing up our reconciliation. No? So this is a very complex issue that this memory backlash. No? And I don't know if you've heard about the Valley of the Fallen. It's this incredible monument. That was part of my in the Sierra in Madrid, built by Franco over 19 years, just to commemorate his military victory. And it's a fascist monument. It's one of the biggest, still functioning fascist monuments in Europe. And it's been extremely difficult just to resignify it or to establish in it a center for interpretation. So I'm very jealous when Natasha says that you have museums, blah, blah, blah. Spain, we don't have a museum, we have nothing because when there is a change of government, every project that starts, in tune with the transnational justice paradigms is going to be stopped or reverted. So we are kind of stuck in this kind of fight, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future. So sorry to be this pessimistic at this point.
We'll try then to be a little more optimistic, maybe with the audience there. Natasha, from your role also in the Transitional Justice Hub, so you're reflecting a lot on transitional justice paradigm, right? And you are in contact also with many organizations around the world. What is happening? Like, what are the key challenges organizations worldwide, or even in Germany also, no? What are the main problematics that you see more in broader? I was reading also today. It's not. You can see articles talking today. I saw one headline: "The Two Spains." It's really scary. But they were talking about Brazil, about the problem with Bolsonaro, and they were talking about the split two Brazils, and Chile's and Milei's in Argentina. I mean, it's really what is happening, and how do we deal with this? Sorry for the question.
Well,
Good luck.
the world solution from Germany. No, basically, probably just 2 words on the Global Learning Hub, because I think that might give a framework for what we are doing, but also how I see the situation in Germany right now. So first of all, the Global Learning Hub, it's a network of different organizations working around the world, from Colombia to Indonesia, South Africa, former Yugoslav countries, but also, and that's really important, from German transitional justice institutions, even so we would never call them like this. So there's one institution basically having designed and implemented the reparation programs for forced labor workers of the Second World War. But we also have one institution looking into the communist dictatorship. Just to, like, because the idea of the Global Learning Hub was basically we do face universal challenges when it comes to kind of facing a violent past and work on peace building and reconciliation, however we frame it. And I agree, it's not about just forgetting about human rights and of course, but somehow to how do we live together after war and violence. So one of the main issues was it's the universal, and it helps if we build a network of solidarity, because we can learn from each other, and very often also we Germans need to learn from others. So just for a starter. When it comes to especially backlash and distortion of memory, I think we are kind of frozen to a certain degree in Germany right now because it happened so fast. The rise of the far right, it was unexpected in Germany, to be honest. I think it took us quite a while, because usually in each society, obviously, you have like 10% of far right, racist, whatever positions, but it went like this, and it went faster than in every other country. You could say exactly our memorialization policy prevented a slow rise, but obviously with other circumstances, not the least economic inequalities, politicians feeding into, let's say, xenophobia and hatred. And I'm not talking about the far right, I'm talking also about our normal democratic parties. So given all this, we do face the same challenges in Germany, but around the world. So we commissioned, for example, last year, together with our partners, studies, comparative country studies in Chile, South Africa, South Korea, and Lithuania to look into strategies of far-right movements and politics to distort memories and attack human rights activists working on transitional justice. And it's always the same strategy. It's physical attacks. It is just shifting the discourse of victims and like really looking into we are the victims. It's South Africa is one example where basically some of the far rights, and this is why Trump attacks South Africa, are basically victims of a white genocide, right? So it's this distortion of who is the victim and who is the perpetrator. It's very easy also to point to external enemies. Chile, communism, we have to defend our country and protect it. South Korea, the same. So you find almost everywhere global strategies to reverse facts, historic facts, to really threaten human rights and democracy, and that's true for Germany. I think what is really important for me, because it goes also into our own society, but what is happening around us, and the undermining of, let's call it, universal human rights. So it is, we did have a consensus in Germany, and for me, my generation, that used to be a very important consensus. And if I'm now saying it, everybody would like scream in Germany, but it's the never again. Never again dictatorship, never again war and genocide, obviously. However, in Germany, we always had two strands on the consensus of never again. The one is rather universal. We protect human rights and democracy. This is how I grew up. I am responsible not for the genocide which happened, but I'm responsible for protecting human rights and democracy in my generation. And I'm also responsible for the protection of human rights and peace worldwide. So it's a universal idea of lessons I learned is the never again on a universal level. There was also one strand which was basically saying it's the Holocaust, that's a singular genocide. It's this discourse of singularity, which was at the beginning basically meant to defend or protect any right-wing revisionism. But now it's this, the Holocaust is singular in the world. And unfortunately, what happened in the last couple of years, I don't say it was never there, but despite this universal idea, we do also have now a discourse since October 7th and the massacre of Hamas in Israel. Basically, we have this idea of we do have a specific responsibility to protect Jewish communities, Israel, and to also stand for the right of existence. But we kind of reinvented this idea of specific responsibility into raison d'être. What is it? It's really special in German. It's Staatsräson. And usually you can't even translate it. The very existence of the German state is bound to protecting the existence of Israel. So what is now happening with this never again consensus is basically not our specific responsibility to stand for the right of existence of the Israeli state and protect Jewish communities and Israeli societies, but to basically be complicit with the Israeli government, and I'm saying government, and undermining human rights and international law. So our politics of remembrance, politics, not culture, turned into a certain kind of, I don't know, dogma, which is undermining today human rights and international law. And that's the tricky thing about consensus. Or that's also the tricky thing about the instrumentalization of memories. And I would say we as a German society and also as a government, we never have been a third party to the Middle Eastern conflict. We never have been, because of our specific responsibility and link to the Israeli state. But today, somehow memorialization politics became a driver of conflict within our society when it comes to polarization, but also when it comes to solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So thinking about consensus and what we really need to address is what is the red line for us when it comes to human rights and protection of human rights. And I for a long time thought our politics of remembrance, but also our culture of remembrance feed into protection. And now it turned into violation, unfortunately. And it's probably, yeah. I wouldn't say it's a bigger challenge, but I would definitely say it's a huge challenge.
Yeah, before I give the floor to the audience, and yeah, I would like to make a little effort to rethink. Okay, we are in this situation. Paco, never again framework is not valid anymore, especially in our societies in Europe. Or how do we adapt as a practitioners, as like peace building organizations that work in memory, that we work with youth, that we're seeing what like the surveys say. Just to give a little bit of optimistic, message, and then we will share with all of you.
Well, I think that never again is a very long time. And we talk about eternity, no? Because, for example, the Francoist monuments in Spain were built for eternity. So we are talking about this kind of the end of time, no? There is obviously a crisis of the never again paradigm because it's happening. So if it's happening, it's that the never again doesn't work. So the situation is a little bleak, but I would say don't panic and don't give up. No, in the sense that I think that we have from different perspectives, because I'm not in the transitional justice system, but I work with it, but I'm not in the system. I think that we have to be to review our policies and review our strategies very deeply and be critical of what's, because I understand that when transitional justice is established, it has a number of institutions or procedures, transitional truth commissions, blah, 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 a lot of things that's going on. And maybe we have to rethink all of them in terms, in connection to what's happening, no? And to try to understand how can we make them more effective. Because we have, we hear that part of this backlash and this right-wing, expansion throughout the world is totally connected to the social media, for example, to the way in which social media is transmitting these fake news or these alternative realities and whatnot. And this is impossible to stop. I mean, I think it's going to be even more complicated in the future, because we were talking about in the artificial intelligence that's now coming in. It has a tremendous bias and a tremendous potential to be manipulated, as we have seen, for example, with Twitter or X. No? Twitter or X used to be a place of change of, and now it's a right-wing. I'm just in Twitter. I'm kind of saving things. I mean, the right-wing things that are happening in Twitter, and so the algorithm says this guy is right-wing. So everything that's feeding me is right-wing. No? So it's like, what is this? And it's totally crazy. But this is real life. And young people, my son, my daughter, they live in these environments. No? So how to kind of be present also. I think it's very difficult. I think we have to revise all institutional and pedagogical strategies, but being really critical. It's like we cannot continue doing the same, because if we continue doing the same, we are losing the battle, so to speak. No, this is not. It's optimistic in the sense that I don't think we should kind of throw the never again out of the window, but we have to rethink it and adapt it to the new world.
Natasha, some thoughts about how to move forward? Very brief.
So first of all, I think when it comes to adapting strategies, obviously it is about activism. So bringing people back to the streets. We talked about it yesterday, right? It's one element, but really keep in mind, at least for those European countries which seem to be far away from any, let's say, presence of violence in their society, try to find and reconnect to, let's say, experiences of violence in our own society. So in Germany, unfortunately, we had for decades linking experiences of violence to present youth or younger generation was basically focusing on survivors of the Holocaust and telling their story for decades and decades. And now people are dying, and we never thought about reconnecting these experiences, creating solidarity, empathy, and this feeling of, oof, wow, I need to really resist authoritarianism, racism, and also fight for peace. So basically, I really wonder why we never try to link experiences of the Holocaust with, we had a real huge community of refugees from former Yugoslav countries. We have a huge Syrian community, also Afghan community. We never opened, and I probably think because of this singularity, we never opened up our discourses, our narratives, our acknowledgement, and the never again with present day experiences of violence. So I would go for this multi-perspectivity and really linking different experience as one element. But what I also thought, what came out, for example, from the Chile study was basically, wow, those working in the field of memorialization, I never perceived it as this in Germany, are human rights activists. They are defending human rights. Yeah, it sounds a bit strange from a European German perspective, but from Chile perspective, it was perfectly clear. People working in memorials because they have fought for it, and we fought for it 30 years back, are human rights defenders. They are transitional justice activists. And we have to monitor from a human rights institution attacks against memorials and museums. We need to have an independent monitor to survey those attacks and protect those ones working in memorial sites from a state perspective. These were some of the ideas. And also in Germany, at least, some of the memorial sites established specific let's say, social media instruments to challenge fake news of the far right. So there are some steps taken, but obviously, yes, more needs to be done.
Good job. Okay, I would like to give the floor to you. Wow, I see 3 questions. Oh, oh my God. Okay, just one deal. Let's do a round of maybe 4, okay? And if the organizers allow us to, 10 more minutes, I think we start a little later. So let's do 4 questions for now.
Is this on now? Yeah. Good morning, and thank you for that. I really enjoyed that talk, and I wanted to also actually call out, Natasha, I thought you did, you walked a very fine line in explaining the way that memory and memorialization is being turned to dogma, and the impact that is having on the approach that Germany has taken to Gaza in particular. So I just wanted to say I had never quite understood that perspective, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I actually wanted to ask about this point that you were talking about at the end, when you were talking about, what can be done. I think, as I was hearing you, I think this distortion of memory is really aided by the way that consensus is fragmented on digital spaces, particularly. And I think that's also why, especially in Germany, the rise of the far right has caught many by surprise. So my question is, what work is there to be done to combat this beyond taking down fake news? How does memorialization need to appear in digital space? Because I really think that is what we're losing. I think a lot of memory work is preaching to the choir, and I think, and that's not I think that's a very difficult thing to do, not to preach to the choir, so this is not a, I'm just saying what could be done to kind of break that and to go into spaces that actually could be turned by being exposed to some of the memorialization work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you also for this comment now, because it's exactly the same questions that we have also for youth in Lebanon, for example. How do we keep the memory alive and interesting enough for the generations to come? And so, yes, can we use digital spheres, social media, whatever? And if so, how? This is, so I think in many, many countries we're facing the same problems, basically. That's one thing. And about the singularity of the memorialization of the Holocaust, yes, I see it also very, very critically. I experienced one very positive example in Belgium, in a memorial. It's called Kazan d'Ossat. And this is where Jews were collected to be deported to concentration camps. And for many years they made a very good, they had a very good and universal approach. So they had exhibitions about the Holocaust, but at the same time they put it in a more global context. So they had also images of the massacres in Rwanda or Srebrenica, so they had this more universal approach for a couple of years, but then there was a lot of resistance from the Jewish community, and the executive director at the end left, and they changed again towards the more singular approach. So I think, yes, that's a battle that we have to continue to fight. So, for example, this director told me that when migrant youth, for example, Arab youth, came to visit Kazan d'Ossat and they saw the pictures of the Holocaust, then they said, oh, so this is what happened to the Jews, and this is what I feel. I feel discriminated in Belgium. So they made the connection as well. So it went both ways. So I found this a very, very good example. One question I have, though, for the rise of the far right in Germany, because we saw the rise of the far right, first of all, in East Germany. It's not anymore restricted only to East Germany, but that's where it happened first. And my question was, is it also due to not dealing adequately enough with how Germany was unified, and that basically West Germany won over East Germany, and that the East Germans felt that they were victims or they lost? So this is one question. Thank you. Sorry for taking so much time.
Thank you, Friederike, and thank you, Natasha. And Natasha and I think we're more or less in the same age, so same generation, and I'm also German, and I have a slightly different take on the memory culture, and I would like just to flex 3 points. First of all, when we ask these questions, do we remember authoritarianism? My question is, for what? And for me, the aim of remembering authoritarianism is to prevent human rights violations, no matter where they are committed, no matter by whom, and to prevent genocide. And Germany, as we know, is complicit in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And so therefore, for me, the question, how does the remembrance culture currently play out, really smacks of authoritarianism itself. Why do I say that? Because, and Natasha, I agree, we should go more back to the streets. What is happening on the streets is that the people who are actually not born in Germany, but they're Germans, Palestinians, we have the highest number of Palestinians living in Germany, they are criminalized, they are silenced, simply because they want their grievances to be heard. And what is the response of the German government? It is a highly authoritarian approach. People are criminalized, people are losing their jobs, people are threatened, and so on. So for me, there the question then is, what we actually celebrate as that we are the world champion in terms of remembering culture, for me it's very performative. And why do I say that? Because we haven't actually integrate this multi-perspectivity you so rightly touched upon, Natasha. I think we talk a lot about it, and we're very good at talking, but we're not so good at walking the talk. And that brings me to my last point, that coming myself from a family of perpetrators, my granddad had a particular role which I'm not going into now, but let's put it like that. I come from a perpetrator family, and I'm mentioning that only because, coming back also what Christina just said, that we haven't dealt with all basically the crimes committed in our name, in our family's name. We haven't actually dealt with that. In most German families, and Francisco, maybe that's the same in the Spanish families, we have not discussed actually what did our grandfather do and what did it to our family, and maybe we still haven't actually dealt with all the grief and all the shame and all the pain and waking up with nightmares, and you cannot explain them, where are they coming from? And I would say what we see with the AfD rise and right-wing fascism has a lot to do with our undealt trauma. Sorry, that was a bit longer and also maybe a bit passionate.
Okay, maybe a fourth intervention over there, and then you answer, and we'll go.
Hi, my name is Amelie. I'm also from Germany, but
Yeah.
I'll try to be short. And these issues tend to be very heavy, so I have a question about comedy. On Thursday, I went to watch the movie La Cena. It's about the time right after the civil war here in Spain was finished and Franco won. And I thought it was funny. And it made me think about other movies or books that were comedy. For example, He Is Back, a book that was published like 10 years ago in Germany. And I would like to ask you, what's your view on comedy or other arts that could be, are they complementary to efforts in the sciences, in politics, or in the in the activist sphere? Or would you see that there's a potential harm in ridiculing the victims or taking away attention from the actual facts? Thank you.
Thank you. So let's try to answer, okay, and then. Yeah.
So there are three Germans talking, and I'm the fourth one. Okay. Well, for the first one, and unfortunately, I'm probably a generation which is not really fond of social media. I'm struggling with social media. I'm probably not the best person to think about how can memorialization appear in social media. To a certain degree, I feel that what Emily now raised with regard to humor, different, instruments, whatever, is more attractive. And it's probably, for Germany, to be honest, I think it's still important to think about responsibility, and very much so when it comes to, did we really deal with the past, and why do we focus only on one victim group and never talked about the bystanders? And unfortunately, I think there were not many bystanders, but much more perpetrators in the German society. So it's really about this, do we deal with it? And I think stories of, let's say, a bit more humoristic, today's stories of either suffering or courage or whatever would be more attractive than referring back to a time, whatever, because I do believe that there are many more elements around in our today's world we could focus on and bring into the discussion. Even so, I'm completely aware of the fact that it's a bit, like Syria, Sudan, whatever, is far more away. But I do believe when it comes to the transitional justice paradigms, we need to rethink this strong focus on victims. I do believe that we really, when it comes to a preventive perspective, we need to think about systems and also perpetrators and bystanders, however we define it. There's this strong narrative and focus in the transitional justice field is to a certain degree, it's not systemic. It's not systemic thinking because it's really a lot about the structures. And humor and arts, well, I love humor. I remember all the jokes people were making in Syria and also in Palestine during, the old Assad regime, and it releases and it creates moments of community and solidarity. So yes, I do believe it's also important to try every angle to bring, let's say, the courage and the solidarity and empathy into our community and beyond.
Paco.
Okay, yeah. Regarding we've been talking a lot about the social media and how memory wars, so to speak, now are being played out in the media. And I think one thing we have to do is to master it. We need to do it. I mean, I'm not a social media person either, but I know that what's going on there is very important. No? So first of all, we have to understand this media and understand how this kind of counter memories, no, are being displayed. No? So there are I wanted to mention two processes that I am very worried. No? One of them is that there is obviously a saturation of empathy, in the world, in the sense that there have been so many catastrophes, and I talk to my humanitarian friends who are working in humanitarian issues, and they say it's getting more and more difficult just to appeal for solidarity, international solidarity, for a disaster, because we have our eyes full of disasters, genocides, and whatnot. So we are kind of splitting longer and longer from the suffering of the people, because we watch it on TV, then we have fake news, then we have movies, then we have, it's all over the place, and there's so much violence that is becoming more and more difficult to tell who is who, what's happening, and which. So it's getting very confusing. And then the right wing is using this strategy. Is very clear with Trump. They flood the zone. No, it's like just make news one after the other. So when you react to the first, they are like 10 miles beyond you. So it's just flood the zone. Just. And I think these strategies are extremely difficult to counter, extremely difficult, because it's working throughout the world. It's really working, no? So we have to understand which are, it's not like, we have to counter this, but we have to understand how this is being produced. I think this is the first stage at the time of saying, well, now what do we do? So we have to be able to become like social media smart people, okay, so to speak. So if we have to go into TikTok, let's make it TikTok, because these are like different languages. I go to many memory museums, and I myself, I work with this, I get bored sometimes because the way in which they are displayed is very, very old-fashioned. And it's not working for young people. So when we were working on the I don't want to talk too good about the social media and digital spaces, but when we were thinking about what to do with the Valley of the Fallen, how to counter this pyramid, which is it's incredible to counter monumentalize. It's impossible because it's so huge. It has the biggest cross in the planet Earth. It's the Guinness record, it's an unbelievable monument, with daily masses, almost 40,000 people buried in the crypts, Franco and Jose Antonio. So how do you counter this? And one of my proposals was just to do like a digital valley. So you have the democratic memory goes in pixels, and authoritarian memory goes in constructive kind of things like stone. And so just to have this counter thing. And if you do it in a smart way with keywords and I don't know, I think we have to work through new languages and new situations, because if not, it's going to be impossible. No? So, and I just wanted to say something about this family work you were talking about, and in Spain is the same. I mean, it's the same because there has been no. You have like two different situations, no? the Republicans or the descendants of Republicans, they didn't speak about what happened because of fear, because of repression. 40 years in silence, generations dying without being able to even go to the mass graves where they knew where they were, but they couldn't even go just to put a flower or whatever, no? And on the other side, the winners of the war, they had all privileges for them, no? And they didn't really, and so they kind of, usually you may have like your grandfather is the butcher of this Andalusia. No, but they talk about them in this son. He was a very good father. He was so the time they kind of cover up this, and this debate has not happened. And also, I believe I agree with you that 40 years of dictatorship may have also played some violence on the families of the winners of the war, because they were streamlined into, I mean, their own personal memories were streamlined into the authoritarian version of the dictatorship. So these things are very, very complex, and they haven't been dealt with in Spain. So a lot of work to do.
10 minutes. We have 10 more minutes, and we have one question over there, and here, and here. There. I take 4, okay?
No Germans.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your incredibly thoughtful and reflective offerings. I wanted to both ask a question, but also pose it from a different perspective, which is a different domain, because most of what I understand you're talking about is also efforts at the national level. I'm from the United States, from Virginia. Long history of multifaceted versions. It's not quite from the authoritarian, but I think we can say racialized forms of oppressions that are still very present today, and still the politics of memory enable those. And yet I also have experience and know of other places where, through engaging in very localized forms of community dialogue-based forms of addressing the past in its contemporary manifestation, have been really, I've felt it in work that I've done in my own small city in rural Virginia, places like the Greensboro, North Carolina Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which are not trying to take everything of the past, but often through the lens of a specific moment, in ways of opening it up fractal-like, but doing it in a very invitational way of saying, how do we reclaim an understanding of what happened in our past in ways that we can now figure out how to live together, and working like a whole of community across line, everyone is involved, and somehow that shifting the politics and the relational foundations locally. And I wonder, in Spain, in Germany, elsewhere where you are working, do you see that form of more localized, embedded communities that live together, going through that process of like almost excavating the memory and holding it up through the lens of contemporary dialogue for working together, so we can kind of root in place and shift in our relations together? And I just love to hear your other experiences with that. Thank you.
Thanks.
First of all, thank you, both of you, for giving these thoughts about basically authoritarism and also on other topics. Mine is kind of one question on maybe two. Basically, I'm Spaniard, Catalan, and half Chilean. So, and I was born after the 2000s. So technically, I'm part of the cyber internet era. So I would like maybe to speak a little bit for a youth perspective on this topic. One thing that I've been talking with my colleagues, my friends, even my younger cousins, is that the idea of like the memories and the idea of like giving the perspective of the past, there is a kind of disconnection here, because Basically, also for social media, for the rise of the extremist perspectives from both sides, and I think in that maybe if we are not teaching them some things that they can actually learn before in the internet, and that's kind of a problem that I see, that maybe, I don't know, for example, in my case, we learn what is this Spanish Civil War when we are in our 15, 16. So like, now you can see in Google and just watch it for yourself and get your own experience without no moderator. And that's kind of a big problem. So I think that we should like try to endorse them to some ideas or the basic conclusions to not end up with a twisted person that has changed them. And the other thing is that, do you consider that, because I agree that the war should be in social media and basically the misinformation, but as well I think is that because many of my colleagues or many people that I talk of my generation is like, oh well, I know that maybe that sound bad, but they are like the person in the government, the leadership, it's right now, the status quo is even worse. Because one thing that, for example, in Chile, still we have the same constitution that we have during the dictatorship. In Spain, yes, we did the transition, but at the same time, the transition was done in a rush, and there are so many things that there is still a Frankist element in the constitutions, in the institutions. For example, in Germany as well, with the situation between the Jews and Palestine conflict. In the US as well, with the idea of racial situations and that kind of thing. So I think that we should change, or not change, but reflect on these institutions and basically do not forget, but like give another perspective, let's say.
Maybe a last one, because, yeah, very short, please. We're running out of time.
Super short. I think this is also kind of jumping into this comment and also what Elena referred to before, which is that online, it seems the problem is a sort of a saturation or an implosion of conflicting memories of common events. And so the question is, to what extent does one have to engage with the absolute taboo enemy? So the far right, for example, what are the strategies there to break this taboo?
Okay, so
Yeah,
try to
I
be
can
brief.
start with the question that was asked there, because as a social anthropologist, you know, I've been in my research is kind of on the ground, just to breathe the same oxygen as the people we are studying. So I've been in many exhumations and I think that's what you are describing for Virginia or North Carolina. It's happening in every exhumation. Just you have to understand that this repression was very well thought, and it went village by village. They would even delay the war just to clean the rear guard. And so they would go in every village for people who had signified themselves to some extent on the left. They were in the city council, or they even voted for the left, because this is known in the villages. Everyone knows. So they had this list and went to the villages. And just imagine, during they executed these people in the outskirts of the villages. And so the families have to live in this context. They know the perpetrators. They are just next door and whatnot. So 80 years later, you just this silence and this tension in the villages. When you go and do the exhumation, you were talking about excavating memory. This is exactly what an exhumation is, because you are retrieving the body, but around the exhumation, there are always communities building up. These communities could be like bystanders, not perpetrators, because they are all dead, but relatives of perpetrators sometimes, but mostly bystanders and relatives. And there is an incredible process going on around exhumation, because as the forensics kind of continue their work, and they in Spain it's very open. The exhumations is not like in Argentina. There is no judicial umbrella in Spain. So basically, it's forensic teams that operate as if they were crime scenes, because there is no penal trials after the exhumation and derived from the exhumations. So they are very open, and people can just go, take pictures, see the bodies, and see how the process goes. And so there is like this discussion, and it has happened in 1,000 places in Spain in the last 25 years. So that means that a lot of people have, this is a bottom-up kind of memory making, very strong, and emotionally it's very powerful just to see what happens there. So I think that regarding the pedagogy, and we were talking about, there is. I wanted to mention one project that I really liked. It's a European project by a network of historians that basically teach history through monuments in conflict. It's called contested histories on site. So it's Euroclio is the network. And so what they do is like they go to different monuments, particularly in Europe, but all over the world. But this is like a strategy. I don't know, probably you know this project. And so they teach story about history, just trying to understand why some monuments heat up, others one just cool down, and why is this happening. So for example, the Valley of the Fallen, but it's in Spain, but in Italy there are a lot of monuments, statues in Virginia, the slavery statues and whatnot first. So understand the history of the statues and try to understand the controversies around this. Okay, I have to stop, yeah, sorry.
No, sorry. Just to give 2 minutes to Natasha to give feedback.
The time's
yeah,
up.
yeah, and we will finish. Yeah.
Yeah, so two ideas from my side. First, when it comes to youth perspectives and experiences, to be honest, I think it's the best for youth kind of designing and moderating. I'm probably, I'm not the generation. I think you know best how to do it, and it's probably, I hope. So it's very much about who's designing museums, expositions, etc. And I think it's really important to connect to a much younger generation. Now, breaking taboos with the right wing, I think there is really a line, and it's discussed in Germany, and I do believe you need to engage, but with those ones who are really on this, like really convinced, and I had some of these discussions, I really doubt if you could change perspective if somebody strongly believes in certain ideologies. I'd rather think about a broader, let's say, I don't know, community or people who are not really far right, but rather in between. Of course, there are some programs with de-radicalization, but it's just too small, I guess. I think what is really important, it's also connecting to the German reunification element. And it's sometimes, yes, I do believe it's really important to localize and reconnect to local experiences. I only learned like 1 year ago, the village hall I spent dancing during my youth, had sports, whatever, and I'm interested in these stories. I never knew that this was the prison for forced labor workers in my village, saying that no concentration camps in Germany, you won't find a lot, but you will find almost in every village a prison of forced labor workers. And that was the everyday violence. And reconnecting to this is helpful. At the same time, I think sometimes these national moments need to be created. And when it comes to the reunification process in Germany, I do believe and it might be different, you know, in Spain, whatever, but sometimes you need to create this political momentum and movement and driver on a national level. And we Westerners, Western Germany, whatever people, need to listen to the experiences of those ones who lived the transition after reunification, because we do not understand it. So I think it's both needed, it's the local level, but also fight for national moments and play on different levels, I guess.
Okay. Well, we could keep going and going and going. This is a very interesting, fascinating discussion, but we have to stop because the organizers will kill us. Thank you so much for all your thoughts, and thank you, Paco and Natasha.